Moroha is an average nobody like you who enrolls in an academy for heroes. However, everything changes when he unlocks memories from his past life, making him the strongest swordsman who uses his big black sword to crack his enemies by day and baddies by night. It all starts in a private academy where special reincarnated students, with memories of their past lives, are trained to become elite monster fighters known as saviors. However, while the hot MILF principal addresses the students, Moroha, who has just enrolled into the academy, dozes off like a drunk father. In his dream, he recalls a fragment of his past life as the strongest knight who destroyed an entire army just to save his red-haired lover. However, just as he is about to lock lips with her, he wakes, only to see the same red-haired girl who headbutts him and then scolds him for dozing off during the ceremony. The headbutt triggers a part of his memory, making him recall her name from their previous life, Sarasha, and he accidentally calls her by that name. The instant she hears it, she also remembers Moroha, and with tears in her eyes, she jumps on his poking antenna, happy to finally reunite with him. She introduces herself as Satsuki, and excitedly calls him Flaga, her big brother from their previous life, but Moroha tells her he pretty much remembers nothing from his past life, much to her surprise. Just then, a girl suddenly drops to the ground, catching their attention, and as Moroha approaches to check on the girl, the psycho suddenly grabs his enormous dome and kisses him. This immediately makes Satsuki mad jealous, and she starts acting like a junkie high on expired Molly before running off like a drama queen. Later that day, everyone gathers at the training ground, where the teacher explains the two types of saviors. The first are the White Knights, who utilize the power of light known as Plana, while the others are Dark Mages who use dark arts. After the teacher demonstrates how to unleash light magic from within, he asks the students to do the same. However, when they complain they don't know how, the teacher reminds them that they all have memories of their past lives, and all they have to do is dig deep into those memories. When the students try to activate their individual magic, known as Plana, they fail miserably, except for Satsuki, who successfully unlocks her Plana, surprising everyone. While Satsuki shows off her impressive power by tossing a girl in the air like a basketball, Moroha tries to activate his own Plana but only manages to trigger a bit of it since his memory is hazy. Just then, one ugly mofo named Tsurugi starts trash-talking the lecturer, demanding some action instead of the boring TED Talk, and this pisses Satsuki off. Eager to flex her skills from Moroha, she confronts the monkey-faced boy, which annoys him, so he activates his dark arts to beat some respect into her. As he cuts the dog tag on his neck, he transforms it into his weapon, and the instant Satsuki does the same, the fight begins. Satsuki does her absolute best to land a strike, but Tsurugi toys with her a little before sending her sword flying and slashing her back. As Satsuki falls to the ground in humiliation, Tsurugi laughs and mocks her, but just then, Moroha shows up to cover her with his jacket. Seeing this, Tsurugi calls Moroha a weak simp who couldn't even activate his Plana, but since Satsuki can't handle her Alabama brother being insulted, she takes off running, and Moroha chases after her. Later that day at the cafeteria, Satsuki is devastated after her defeat at the arena, and when Moroha tries to cheer her up, she decides to open up about the real reason why she chose to fight. She admits fighting Tsurugi wasn't because of justice, but because she wanted to look good in front of him so he could praise her. After bawling her eyes out, she begs Moroha to scold her with his chili whip like he used to in their past lives. However, before Moroha can even utter a word, the strange girl from earlier, Shinozu, suddenly shows up and starts munching on Satsuki's fries. Pissed off, Satsuki yells at the nutcase to take a hike, but Shinozu calls her a man-snatcher before suffocating Moroha's stupid face in her enormous wobblies. Not to be outshined, Satsuki immediately yanks Moroha's head away from her and tries to give him the same jiggling effect. But Moroha complains about how bony her mosquito bite is, which strikes a nerve and causes Satsuki to run off in premium embarrassment. Now alone with Shinozu, Moroha wants to know why she interrupted their lunch, but Shinozu just walks away, saying it's still too early to reveal anything. The next day at the training ground, Moroha confronts Tsurugi and demands an apology for embarrassing Satsuki. But the ugly smug boy refuses, saying flat girls deserve no apology, and then tosses a couple of swords to Moroha to choose from, since obviously someone is getting Isekai'd today. As Moroha picks up a sword, Tsurugi cuts his dog tag, unleashes his weapon, and attacks with full force. With the entire class watching, Moroha gets tossed around like a useless rag doll by Tsurugi, but being the main character, he refuses to give up and continues to attack with all his strength. After Tsurugi deflects all his attacks like they're nothing, he breaks Moroha's sword and is on the verge of sending him to the Pearly Realm. At that moment, Satsuki yells from the sideline, reminding Moroha that he is the guardian of the Holy Sword and the most powerful knight alive. Hearing this triggers memories of Moroha's past life, giving him the knowledge of how to activate his plana. So, as he cuts his dog tag, he transforms it into his powerful katana, and with twice the speed of lightning, Moroha attacks Isuroji and eventually drops him. However, after exhausting most of his energy, Moroha blacks out, but Satsuki rushes to cushion his fall. Several hours later, when Moroha regains consciousness, he finds a short blondie named Maya on top of him, shocking him. Confused, he looks around, only to find the hot mommy principal, who explains that Maya transferred mana through his lips to replenish his lost strength. As the mommy milker sits beside his bed, she tells him that she watched his fight earlier with Ishirugi, and from what she deduced, he must be the reincarnate of an ancient hero. When Moroha asks what she means by that, she explains that saviors are reincarnated people with past lives, but among these saviors, there exist some special ones who didn't live just one life but two, and she suspects Moroha must be one of them. Shortly afterwards, after Moroha fully recovers, Satsuki hugs him, excited that he is fine. However, as she tries to kiss him, Shinazu suddenly pops out of nowhere and calls her a thirsty hoe. Satsuki tweaks, trying to explain that she needs his saliva, but Shinozu ignores her ranting, and to make her jealous, kisses Moroha, which drives Satsuki insane. Later that day in class, a handsome hunk named Jin walks in, making all the girls cream their pants, but he ignores their thirsty faces and then asks Moroha and Shinozu to come with him. As they head outside the class, Jin informs Moroha and Shinozu that he wants them to join his special squad of fighters called Strikers, who specialize in fighting monsters known as metaphysicals. When Moroha asks what he stands to gain by joining his raggedy squad, Jin whispers that his team is filled with freaky baddies who would want a taste of his mayonnaise. Excited at the thought of finally getting some creamy action, Moroha immediately jumps at the offer, and Shinozu, desperate to stay by his side, also accepts. However, Satsuki, who has been eavesdropping on the conversation, immediately storms out, demanding to join too, but Jin refuses, explaining that she is too shapeless to be on his team. Feeling bad, Satsuki immediately runs off, swearing to enlarge her plots even if it's the last thing she does. Much later, Jin introduces Moroha and Shinozu to the striker team, and after seeing how busty the babes on the team are, Moroha is happy to be in the right place. After the introductions, the team engages in a little physical and magical training while Moroha and Shinozu watch from the sidelines to learn the team's tactics. Later that day, while heading home from training, Moroha and Shinozu run into Satsuki, who complains that she has been waiting for them for hours and then invites Moroha to have lunch with her. However, before Moroha can even reply, Shinozu immediately turns down the invitation, saying they are extremely tired and need to go home. Offended, Satsuki immediately runs off, trying not to show how heartbroken she is. After Moroha scolds Shinozu for being so hard on Satsuki, he runs after her and finally catches up to her as she bawls her eyes out. To cheer her up, he walks home with her instead and then promises to have lunch with her some other time, which excites Satsuki. That weekend, Satsuki, who is completely over the whole beef with Shinozu, invites her to the mall to help pick a gift for Moroha. After checking out various stores, they decide to take a break outside the mall, where Shinozu nags that she needs ice cream after being dragged everywhere, so Satsuki heads to the ice cream store to get some. However, on her way back, Satsuki notices a drastic change in the weather, and before she can figure out what's happening, an earthquake occurs, and suddenly a massive snake-like metaphysical emerges from the ocean. As everyone scurries off to safety, Satsuki suddenly notices the abyss monster trying to attack a girl, so she immediately pulls out her dog tag, and after she transforms, she launches an assault against the beast before it reaches the girl. Enraged by her attack, the beast tries to retaliate, but Shinozu arrives at that moment, blasting it with powerful ice shards and saving Satsuki from becoming monster snacks. Working together as a team, the girls lead the snake beast away from the people and into the evacuated mall, where they try their absolute hardest to put it down. However, just when they think they are winning, the metaphysical reveals its multiple heads and then fires off a poisonous mist at Satsuki, but Shinozu throws herself into the attack to save her. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the striker team is informed of the situation at the mall, but Jin tells Moroha that there is nothing they can do about it, explaining that the snake-headed metaphysical is a dreadnought-class threat. Upon hearing this, Moroha recalls when he was little and lost his parents in a tragic accident, and was too useless to do anything to save them. With this memory stuck in his head, he never wants to lose anybody he loves again, so he slaps Jin's hand away from his shoulder and calls all of them a bunch of scared wussies. Back at the mall, the girls find themselves cornered by the beast, and just as it is about to chew them out of existence, Moroha arrives just in the nick of time to slice off its disgusting tongue. After he apologizes for arriving late, Moroha goes head-to-head with the metaphysical and manages to stab its eye. However, when Shinozu sees that Moroha is getting overwhelmed by the monster, she reminds him that he has a second untouched power. Upon hearing this, Moroha suddenly recalls his second past life as the strongest dark wizard, and with this knowledge, he is able to inscribe a powerful magic spell, which he fuses with his sword and chops the beast into several parts like beef. Moments later, back at the academy, Satsuki gets invited to be a member of the Strikers for bravely challenging the monsters and protecting the defenseless, shocking her. Even though she is still plotless, he tells her they need courageous people like her, and then, turning to Moroha, Jin admits he was a coward before thanking him for standing by his decision. Several weeks later, while the gang chill at a cafeteria downtown, Satsuki brings up the Dreadnought class metaphysical that Moroha defeated, and then informs everyone that the principal made a statement saying the three of them defeated it together. Satsuki is uncomfortable with taking the glory, knowing that Moroha defeated it all by himself, but Moroha tells her to chill, explaining that he is fine with everyone thinking they defeated the monster together. As Satsuki glazes Moroha's flawless victory over the beast, Shinozu reveals that, apart from the 6 heads, no other mofo could have done what Moroha did. When Moroha asks what she means by that, Shinozu explains that the 6 heads are high-ranking saviors who are members of the White Knight Agency, the highest organization of fighter saviors. While this conversation is ongoing, some blonde ditty boy walks into the cafeteria and starts feeling himself. When the waitress asks for his order, he says he would like to eat her tuna, which makes the green-haired baddie uncomfortable and pisses off the feminist side in Satsuki. As Satsuki yells at the dude for acting like a jerk, Moroha immediately restrains her before she punches his face in and then apologizes for her rash behavior. After the chaos settles, Moroha goes to the counter to place an order, but suddenly he notices that the blonde creep is no longer in his seat. He also realizes time has stopped, and as he tries to figure out what the heck is happening, he senses the dude moving like the Flash and now standing behind him. In a matter of seconds, he appears in front of Moroha, trying to punch his face, but then stops, as his intention is not to fight, but to test Moroha's power. Seeing that Moroha is no match for him, the dude leaves the cafeteria, and while Moroha is still trying to figure out what the heck just happened, Shinozu explains that the blonde guy is Edward, one of the top 6 heads in the world, who is in charge of the saviors in Great Britain. Hours later, while Moroha, Satsuki, and Shinozu head to the training ground, Maya sees Moroha from afar and excitedly runs over to him, happy to see him again. When Satsuki asks what a brat like her is doing at the academy, Maya explains that she awakened as a savior before anyone else did, and since Principal Mari is her elder sister, she lets her stay at the academy. After Shinozu confirms what Maya just said, Moroha is shocked that she knows Maya so well, and Shinozu shyly explains that her older brother is the school's chairman, shocking both Moroha and Satsuki. A few minutes later, everyone gathers at the training ground, where the teacher announces that they will hold an inter-class practice duel between first and second-year students. However, before the teacher finished talking, some spiky-haired idiot named Kami volunteers to represent the second years and then points at Moroha to be his opponent from the first years, because apparently Moroha is bagging more chicks than his entire generation. However, Moroha doesn't argue and simply accepts the duel under the watchful eyes of Edward and the rest of the teachers. As soon as the duel starts, Kami activates his prana and using a level 2 magic spell, blasts Moroha with an inferno. He laughs like a clown, thinking he has already won, but he is shocked when Moroha cancels out the fire like it's nothing and counters with a powerful inferno of his own that can roast even the devil. Later that same day, Moroha heads to the principal's office to confirm what he heard about Shinozu's older brother being the school chairman, but instead, he runs into the mini Barbie, who offers to explain everything. She tells him that Shinozu's family is extremely wealthy and that her grandfather was one of the school's capital investors. She further explains that Tadanori, Shinozu's elder brother, is an executive of the Japan branch and that his aim is to also make Shinozu an executive so he can gain more influence. Upon hearing this, Moroha realizes that Shinozu is being used as a tool by her brother, and Maya confirms it, though she explains that Shinozu has been much happier since she met him. Sometime later, while Moroha takes a quick nap on the field, Shinozu sits beside him, and as she watches him sleep, she remembers a time in their past life together when she was the witch of the Netherworld, while Moroha was Shusara, the great wizard of Oz. Together, they froze an entire kingdom so they could smash in a chilly environment. A while later, when Moroha wakes, he also remembers a fragment of those chilly times together with Shinozu, which makes him smile. While relishing the moment, his hand suddenly squeezes something soft and squishy, but when he hears a soft squeal, he realizes he is grabbing onto Shinozu's floppers and freaks out. After he apologizes, he asks if she is the witch of the Netherworld, but Shinozu refuses to reveal anything and instead says she wants to taste his tongue. While this freakiness is going on, Satsuki walks in on them and immediately starts throwing jealous tantrums. Later that evening, Moroha gets invited for dinner at Shinozu's condo by her brother, Tadanori. When Shinozu meets Moroha at the dinner table, she almost bursts her floodgates, seeing him sharply dressed like 007. Moroha also compliments how freaking hot she looks, which makes Shinozu blush hard. As they eat dinner, Tadanori brings up the topic of S-ranks and the condition to become one, which is that a savior has to defeat a powerful metaphysical without any help. When Tadanori asks Moroha if he would like to become an S-rank, Moroha clarifies that he didn't defeat the metaphysical on his own, but with the help of Satsuki and Shinozu, so he can't be one. Still, Tadanori insists he can make Moroha S-rank by forcing Shinozu and Satsuki to falsely testify that he actually handled the metaphysical by himself. As he keeps pushing, trying to tempt Moroha with money and fame, Shinozu interrupts, arguing that Moroha will lose his freedom forever if he becomes an S-rank, but Tadanori shuts her up, saying it's a family decision. Hours later, while heading home, Moroha can't stop thinking about everything Tadanori talked about, but he suddenly notices a biker trailing him. So he asks the driver to stop and continues the rest of the journey on foot. When he reaches a secluded spot, he calls out to the spy to reveal themselves, and a girl in a helmet emerges from the shadows. When Moroha demands to know what she wants, the girl chooses to fight rather than talk and immediately activates her prana to attack. Moroha swiftly dodges all her attacks, but when the souvenir snacks he got from Shinozu's house spill across the ground, he gets pissed. He activates his prana and fights her with real anger this time, furious that she wasted his food, but the attacker unleashes a strange green aura, which Moroha instantly recognizes as an attack he experienced in his past life. So he counters by blasting her with a breeze blade that sends her flying and rips off parts of her armor, causing her to retreat in humiliation. Hours later, after the planned attack on Moroha, Edward calls Tadanori to inform him that his maid was responsible for attacking Moroha. However, he adds that he's disappointed after testing Moroha's abilities and won't be nominating him for S rank. Tadanori tries to convince him, reminding him that Moroha defeated a Dreadnought-class monster on his own, but Edward refuses to believe it, insisting that it must have been an accident, or that Shizuno and Satsuki were simply stronger than expected. Back at the academy, Moroha returns to his room only to find Maya inside. He freaks out and demands to know what the midget is doing there, but Maya calmly explains that starting today, she's his new roommate. When she claims his bed, Moroha demands she leave immediately, but the shorty refuses, insisting that the order was from the principal. The next morning, Shizuno gets the shock of her life when Tadanori informs her that she'll be traveling abroad to study. He explains that the Great Britain headquarters is lacking dark mages, so her expertise is needed there. When Shizuno protests, refusing to go, her selfish scum of a brother tells her the family has already decided, meaning she has no choice. Later that day at school, Satsuki practically loses her mind after finding out that Moroha and Maya are now living together as roommates. During lunch break, Moroha compliments Shizuno's curry buns, so she decides to mouth-feed him some of her creamy buns, but Satsuki's brain almost deep fries watching this. She gets jealous that Moroha just shared an indirect kiss with Shizuno, and insists that he mouth-feed her his sausage too. After school that day, Moroha, Satsuki, and Maya walk Shizuno home and say their goodbyes, but deep down, Shizuno feels awful for not having the courage to tell them she'll be leaving soon. When she gets home shortly afterward, she cries in the shower the entire time, feeling completely helpless and unable to change her fate. The next morning in class, Moroha and Satsuki are surprised and confused when Shinozu is not in school. However, before they can figure anything out, Maya rushes in, panicking, to break the news that Shizuno is leaving. Meanwhile, Tadanori and Edward are finalizing preparations for Shizuno's departure to Great Britain when the butler comes in to inform Shizuno that she has a call from the school principal. As Shinozu goes to answer the call, she finds out it isn't from the principal, but Moroha, who wants to know why she skipped school that day. Shinozu lies that she has a cold, but Moroha easily figures out that her selfish brother is behind everything. When he threatens to barge into her home if she doesn't tell the truth, Shizuno finally reveals everything that she's leaving for Great Britain. Moroha tries to talk her out of it, telling her not to listen to her jerk of a brother, but Shizuno insists she can't. She remembers being a little slave girl in her past life and how she was branded with hot iron by the family she now serves. She tells Moroha there's nothing she can do because she's bound to them, but Moroha refuses to accept it, so later that day, he storms inside Shizuno's mansion, determined to stop her from leaving. However, when Edward and Tadanori try to stop him, Moroha damns the consequences and boldly claims he's an S rank, before admitting he also defeated the metaphysical on his own. Shizuno is stunned to see Moroha willing to throw away his freedom just to save her, and Moroha tells her that even though he doesn't remember anything from their past life, in this life she means everything to him. Upon hearing this, Shizuno bursts into tears and runs straight into his arms, crying uncontrollably, and that's when Moroha grabs her and jumps out the window, leaving Tadanori fuming in anger. Outside the house, Satsuki and Maya are already waiting with the getaway car, and together they escape the mansion. Watching them flee, Tadanori loses his mind and then begs Edward to bring his sister back, and Edward agrees. As Moroha and the girls speed off with fast and furious level driving, Edward attacks the car, nearly sending it crashing. Luckily, Moroha uses chains to stop the vehicle from crashing into a ditch, but just then, Edward and his maid block them midway and demands Moroha hands Shinozu over. When Moroha refuses, Edward points out that even though Moroha claims to have defeated the metaphysical on his own, there is no evidence of it. To prove his insane strength, Moroha then challenges Edward to a duel, so while Satsuki and Shizuno face off against Edward's maid, Moroha and Edward head deep into the forest to fight without interruptions. As the duel begins, Edward activates his plana and draws his massive sword. With it, he engages Moroha, and after several clashes, Edward manages to stab Moroha in his guts. Meanwhile, Satsuki and Shizuno fight the maid, but they're too weak and useless to bring her down. Maya, on the other hand, is racing through the forest, trying to find where Moroha and Edward are currently fighting. At the battleground, Moroha tries to cast a powerful ancient spell, but since it's taking him 3 business days to charge up, Edward smashes him into the trees and sends him tumbling even deeper into the forest. Moroha can barely move from his injuries, but at that moment Maya arrives and casts a massive force field that allows Moroha to tap into his true power. When Moroha then tries to fire off another spell, Edward, confident he can intercept like before, tries to attack. However, this time, Moroha changes direction at the speed of light, and after he completes the spell, a magical orb of fire appears, which he merges with his katana. As Moroha attacks again, he breaks Edward's massive sword clean in 2, but just as Moroha goes in for the finishing blow, he's caught off guard when Edward uses a second dog tag to transform into a medieval knight with a giant shield. Suddenly, Moroha's mind gets invaded with memories of the past, and as he snaps back to the present, he finally understands how to end the fight. So, he levitates into the sky like Temu Doctor Strange and starts inscribing a forbidden spell that leaves everyone, including Edward, completely stunned. Once he completes the spell, a massive ice dragon erupts from the inscription and plummets from the sky, crashing into the mountain and freezing the entire forest, along with Edward. Later that night at the academy, Moroha tells the girls and the principal that he didn't actually defeat Edward, he only left him frozen. To confirm this, the dog poop stain suddenly shows up at the door and acknowledges that Moroha actually won. He also assures Moroha that he has cancelled Shizuno's transfer to Great Britain, and then says he has formally nominated him for S rank. When summer break arrives, Jin announces during practice that the striker team will be having a summer camp on a small island. Upon hearing this, Tokiko, the creepy vice president of the strikers, squeezes Moroha's saggy sacs and insists he goes swimsuit shopping with her. Meanwhile, the rest of the students get excited, thinking summer at the beach means playtime, but Jin quickly warns that they're actually going there for training. Later that day at Shizuno's residence, Tadanori is excited after hearing about the beach camp, as he sees it as the perfect opportunity for Shizuno to seduce a powerful striker like Moroha and win his heart. So he orders his designers to find Shizuno the perfect outfit for the job, and even though she tries to resist, the designers bundle her away to take her measurements. Much later, Moroha arrives at the mall to meet up with Tokiko for swimsuit shopping, but while searching for her at the Kuchi fabric section, he runs into Momo, a member of the strikers who is also shopping for a swimsuit. Startled by his presence, Momo immediately hides the swimsuit, but Moroha lets her know he is no fool and he is aware that she is desperately searching for a swimsuit. Embarrassed, Momo tries to deny it and then berates herself that she is too shapeless to wear a swimsuit. But to encourage her, Moroha tells her that any size will make the wood rise. The next day at the academy, the principal gathers the striker squad and uses a heavy-duty teleportation spell to send them to the island, since it's way cheaper than using Uber. Once they arrive, everyone changes into their swimsuits, and Satsuki gets so excited she nearly drowns in the water, but runs out in panic, forgetting her melon guard in the ocean. Maya also shows up in a pink bikini, even though she's flatter than the latest iPhone, and shortly, Momo joins them, but since she is too shy for her own good, she covers her swimsuit with a loose boyfriend t-shirt. When Moroha tries to encourage Momo to reveal her sweet buns and the swimsuit she got, Satsuki gets jealous that Moroha is stalking girls, even to the extent of knowing they just bought a new swimsuit, and immediately starts seeing Momo as a rival. Just then, Shizuno shows up with her show-stopping honkers in a red swimsuit, and Moroha nearly fires off his plot gun, while the rest of the girls finally understand how a swimsuit is supposed to look. Suddenly, Vice President Tokiko shows up again and resumes her creepy, torturous flirting with Moroha. But this time, Jin grabs her by the head and nearly cracks her skull, just to stop her chaos. That afternoon, Jin gathers everyone and announces that, for their training, each person must choose their own challenge and complete it by the last day of camp. Everyone gets excited about the freedom, so Jin tells them to reconvene later that evening to get started. But Satsuki immediately challenges Momo to a race competition. Even though Momo clearly doesn't want this, she reluctantly agrees, so they both line up. Moroha is choosing to be the referee, and when the race starts, Momo leaves Satsuki in the dust like a rookie and leaves her panting like an exhausted bear. Still, Satsuki refuses to accept defeat, but after several attempts, she gets frustrated that she still can't beat Momo. While the race is ongoing, Moroha gets a call from Dog Poop Stain, who informs him that the 6 heads are planning to hold a meeting about officially making Moroha a S rank. After the call, Shizuno asks Moroha what the call is all about, and Moroha explains that according to Edward, 5 of the 6 heads support his promotion to S rank. But the last one, known as the Lightning Emperor of Russia, is firmly against it. Hearing this, Maya tells Moroha that it's bad news, because Principal Mari once told her that the Lightning Emperor is terrifying. While heading to the 6-head meeting venue, Principal Mari receives an update from Maya, her spy, about everything Moroha's been doing at summer camp and how much fun she also has been having. Later that night at camp, Maya and Shizuno spy on Moroha and Satsuki, who've been spending an unusual number of late nights together, which has made everyone curious. However, contrary to their naughty thoughts, Satsuki simply wants Moroha to train her so she can outrun Momo. But Moroha doesn't get why she's stressing so much about outrunning Momo, especially since everyone knows Momo is prime Usain Bolt. He tells her to pick a different challenge that plays to her own strengths, but Satsuki refuses and hugs him. That sudden closeness triggers Moroha's past memories, and he finally understands where her insecurities come from. Back then, when he was Flaga, he was always leaving her behind to fight wars, which made her feel like a useless burden. In the present, Satsuki explains that she wants to get stronger so she'll never be left behind again, and that's why she refuses to give up on challenging Momo. Moroha, however, tells her that the reason he keeps her away from battle, even though she has huge potential, is because he couldn't bear the thought of losing her. When Satsuki continues to insist on facing Momo, Moroha explains that Momo specializes in speed, and it would be difficult to defeat her in the area where she excels. Still, Satsuki refuses to back down, and realizing it's impossible to change her mind, Moroha finally agrees to train her, but warns that he cannot guarantee her victory, which excites Satsuki. The following day, the striker team enjoys barbecued meat prepared by Satsuki, and they're all surprised she's such a talented cook, but Satsuki proudly explains that she's been perfecting her culinary skills for years, so she can be the best wife for Moroha. While Moroha and Jin enjoy a plate of grilled beef together, Kami suddenly shows up and starts talking trash about Moroha's S-rank promotion being revoked. However, Tokiko, sick of Kami's stupid behavior, steps in to embarrass him by loudly announcing to everyone that he has a pee-pee the size of a newborn. That night, Satsuki starts the Olympic race training with Moroha on the water, but she fails every single time. However, every time Moroha tries to tell her to give up, Satsuki somehow thinks he's motivating her, so she keeps pushing even harder. After the late-night training, Satsuki is completely exhausted, but as they head back to camp, she notices something ominous stirring in the water, but she brushes it off as a chilling breeze and suggests they head back to join the rest. Before summer camp wraps up, the strikers celebrate with fireworks and even start shooting them at each other's behinds just for laughs. Later that night, while heading back to the camp, Moroha bumps into Shizuno, who's dressed in a cute yukata and looking absolutely gorgeous. Moroha can't take his cultured eyes off her, but Shizuno explains that her brother forced her to wear it. Moroha gets hit with a wave of confused emotions, but when he tries to run off, Shizuno grabs his hand and places it on her plots. She tells him to squeeze a little, but when Moroha freaks out like a useless virgin, she suggests they hang out a little before going to bed. Meanwhile, that same night, the six heads begin their important meeting to discuss Moroha's promotion to S rank, but Vasilisa, the Russian Lightning Emperor, immediately objects. Charles, the German representative, agrees with her, but Ando, the turtle-headed representative from Japan, says he supports the promotion and believes Moroha has talent. When Edward tries to convince the group that Moroha is the real deal, Lu Jin, the China rep, says he has no issue with promoting Moroha, while the last member, Arlene from the United States, attending through a Zoom call, points out they don't even have enough information to judge Moroha's abilities. Edward insists this isn't a problem and tells them Moroha defeated a nine-headed metaphysical. Still, the others refuse to accept it, insisting that without proof, they'll dismiss it as trash talk. Edward tries again to talk sense into them, but suddenly Ando clutches his chest in pain, indicating that a metaphysical has just appeared. As alarms blare, a colossal metaphysical starts emerging from the waters right beside the striker squad's camp. Meanwhile, the strikers have already seen it on the surveillance, and fear spreads through the group as they realize this one is far stronger than the creature Moroha fought before. Even worse, if this monster reaches land, the disaster will be catastrophic, so Jin informs them that they've been ordered to retreat by headquarters because the danger is too great. When Satsuki asks if they're really not going to do anything about it, Jin says the orders are absolute, and as the squad leader, he can't take them into a hopeless battle. He immediately orders the team to grab their belongings and prepare to evacuate with the rest of the islanders already boarding the ship. However, Moroha and the girls refuse to run away like headless chickens, and instead are ready to fight. Back at the meeting, Vasilisa is thrilled, laughing like a deranged villain, seeing this as the perfect chance to test Moroha's abilities firsthand. She suggests that none of the six heads interfere, and insists the boy Edward claims has S-rank potential should handle the monster by himself. As civilians are evacuated from the island, Moroha and the girls get pumped for action, but to their surprise, Jin also shows up fully prepared to fight. When Moroha asks why he isn't retreating, Jin explains that, at that moment, he isn't a leader or a squad member but simply a concerned human being. He says he was inspired by how Moroha saved the girls previously, and believes the five of them can defeat the monster. However, just as those words leave his mouth, the rest of the striker team appears behind them, also ready to fight alongside their leader. Together, the squad draws their weapons and prepares to face the metaphysical. They learn that the beast is attracted to noise and loud music, so they devise a plan. Jin, as the leader, will take the front where the attack will be most intense, while Moroha attacks from the rear. As the colossal beast continues to approach the city, they suddenly realize that it stops. However, that's when they notice fireworks going off and realize that the brain-dead crackhead, Kami, is attacking the beast with fireworks. His action only makes things worse, as the metaphysical is drawn to the sound and approaches him, so the team is forced to commence the plan prematurely just to save him. After seeing the monster's massive size up close, some random coward tries to quit, but Tokiko tells him it's too late and then grabs his baby's sack to punish him for even thinking of ditching his teammates. Just then, the squad starts unleashing magic spells at the metaphysical, and at first it looks like they're winning, until the beast fires off swarms of bugs generated from its skin to fight back. As the monster advances deeper into the city, Jin activates his plana and attacks, but he only manages to blast off a small part of its body. At the rear, Moroha plays loud music to draw the monster toward him, and as it approaches, he activates his plana and, with lightning speed, charges straight at the beast. He then summons his fiery magic orb, fuses it with his sword, and slices off one of the monster's arms, but the metaphysical counterattacks immediately with its other arm. With everyone pulling their weight on the battlefield and attacking as a unified team, another arm of the metaphysical gets sliced off and drops into the ocean. However, their continued assault only enrages the beast, causing its entire body to transform into heads, and from those heads it unleashes a body-crushing sound attack that destabilizes the entire striker squad. Even Jin isn't spared, and only Moroha manages to protect himself from the deafening sound by activating a soundproof barrier. With everyone down and unable to move, the flying bugs close in, ready to feast on their flesh, and even when the order comes in telling them to retreat, Satsuki refuses to back down. She remembers all the late-night training she and Moroha have been doing, and it fires her up, so she grabs her weapon and attacks the bugs, determined to protect everyone. As she chops through the swarm like onions, the metaphysical notices her, gets angry, and starts moving toward her. Seeing Satsuki in danger, Moroha jumps onto the metaphysical, not even sure what to do next, but suddenly he remembers his past life as a powerful sage and recalls a deadly spell he once used. With that memory stuck in his head, he starts carving a magical circle into the monster's body with his sword. On the other side, Maya casts a barrier to protect the wounded from the bugs, while Satsuki keeps slicing through the swarm. Satsuki eventually gets exhausted, but Moroha, still carving the circle, orders her to join the rest of the team inside the barrier. Once the magic circle is complete, Moroha unleashes a massive explosive spell that detonates like an atomic bomb and completely annihilates the metaphysical. Back at the Six Heads meeting, they realize the metaphysical has been defeated by Moroha, and even though this proves his S-rank potential, Vasilisa and Charles are furious. Meanwhile, back on the beach, Satsuki decides to reward Moroha for his hard work by letting him rest his head on her thighs. But Shizuno steps in to demonstrate how to properly reward a man by placing his head on her huge wagamamas. This sparks a fight over who gets to hold Moroha's head, until Tokiko suddenly shows up and claims her own dumplings are the perfect choice. Sometime later that night, Vasilisa sends one of her students to eliminate Moroha and avoid Japan from being the only country with 2 S ranks. The following week at school, Moroha finds a secret letter in his locker, asking him to meet at the back of the stadium. He panics, thinking it might be a love letter, but when he gets there, he meets Elena, the transfer student from Russia, who tells him she has fallen madly in love with him at first sight. Moroha is shocked, knowing she apparently fell in love after sending the letter, and with how confident she sounds, he immediately suspects it might be some kind of scam. When Elena insists that her goal is for them to be lovers and go on dates together, Moroha feels everything is moving too fast, so as he rejects her offer, Elena instantly goes into depression. Later that day in class, the teacher introduced Elena to everyone as the transfer student from Russia. However, Shizuno immediately senses something is off, so she stands up and asks Elena what her real objective is and whether she actually enrolled to assassinate someone. Everyone is stunned by Shizuno's accusation, but Elena calmly replies that her only objective is to get closer to Moroha. Hearing this immediately activates Satsuki's jealousy, so she confronts Elena and says she will never allow her to achieve her goal. When Elena asks who she is, Satsuki proudly introduces herself as Moroha's sister, and then continues insisting she won't let anyone get close to him. Shinozu jumps in too, and the 3 girls start arguing and fighting over Moroha right in front of the class, while the useless failure of a teacher just stands there, unable to control the students. Later that day, during practice, the whole team won't stop talking about the Russian girl's love confession, leaving Moroha completely embarrassed. When school closes for the day, Moroha and the girls head home, only to find Elena standing at the entrance waiting for them. But Satsuki and Shizuno instantly go full territorial mode, clinging to Moroha like guard dogs. However, Elena shocks everyone with her confidence when she flat out asks Moroha to go on a date with her. That weekend, Moroha ends up going on the date with Elena, and during the date, Elena latches onto Moroha's arm like a parasite the entire time. They stop by a cafeteria to eat buns, and Elena devours hers like a starved chihuahua. When Moroha calls her out for eating like a death row inmate, Elena opens up, explaining that back in Russia, they never had time for cafes because they were raised in strict military conditions. She adds that the Dagestan training was brutal, and they were sent into battle early. Moroha can somehow tell that her story is real, so he promises they'll keep hanging out, and he'll show her more places with food worth drooling over. Elena is moved by his kindness and then asks if he isn't the least curious to know whether she might be a Russian assassin sent to unalive him. However, Moroha tells her that as long as she isn't planning on taking him out, he is fine. After lunch, they take pictures together, and when Moroha notices Elena staring at a cute doll on the shelf, he decides to get it for her, making her blush hard. To wrap up the weird date, they see a movie at the cinema where Elena starts getting a little too touchy with Moroha. Meanwhile, Shizuno contacts Edward's maid, Angela, who is now basically her buddy, to dig up info on Elena, and that's when she finds out that Elena is known as the Man-Eater, the same girl who once stabbed Edward. Later that day, Moroha and Elena take a detour through the park on their way home. There, they see a boy playing ball with his dad, which makes Moroha open up about losing his parents and being raised solely by his uncle. He tells Elena they're very similar since they're both orphans, which hits Elena right in the emotions. Moroha also brings up her younger brother and says he'd love to meet him someday. Later that night, a strange black bird visits Elena to remind her not to lose focus on her assignment, which is to bring Moroha down. The voice speaking through the bird tells her to keep seducing Moroha so she can become his weakness, and as a reward, the voice promises to persuade Vasilisa to let Elena spend time with her brother who has been locked up for years. The next day at school, Elena gets a letter in her locker from Shinozu, inviting her to the school field that night to challenge her to a duel in exchange for leaving Moroha alone. Shinozu tells Elena that she already knows what her mission is, and that she was sent by the Russians to destroy Moroha. Before Elena can even accept the duel, Shinozu activates her prana and immediately attacks her with ice magic. Elena dodges with incredible speed, but she gets overwhelmed when Shinozu relentlessly continues to fire ice shards at her. When Elena tries to sneak attack from behind, Shinozu summons an ice dragon to protect her and to fight in her stead. As the dragon fires off a massive ice breath, Elena gets knocked away, and realizing she might get flatlined anytime soon, Elena decides to use her man-eater prana. With her real powers now unleashed, Elena summons a weapon that can cancel out any magic, and with it she erases all of Shinozu's ice spells with ease, leaving Shinozu shocked. No matter how hard Shizuno tries, Elena destroys the ice dragon and forces her to surrender. With her blade to Shinozu's neck, Elena says she'll spare her life only if she swears to never stand between her and Moroha again. However, when Shinozu refuses to make such a promise, Elena threatens to disfigure her face and leave her looking like Pennywise. Still, Shinozu refuses to make any promises and says even if she becomes the ugliest girl alive, Moroha will never leave her. Elena is shocked at her confidence, but before she can respond, the teacher arrives, warning that saviors are banned from fighting on school grounds. Not wanting to get caught, Elena immediately fled the scene, leaving Shizuno to face the consequences alone. For breaking school rules, Shizuno gets suspended, and the next day at school, Moroha, Satsuki, and Maya are shocked to learn she's been placed under house arrest by her brother, while Elena is nowhere to be found. After school that day, Moroha visits Elena at home to check on her. While in her bedroom, he notices her legs are bandaged, and when he asks what happened, Shizuno decides to come clean and tell him everything she knows about Elena. She explains that Elena is a man-eater and an assassin sent from the Russian branch who wields a demon sword. At first, Moroha finds it hard to believe the cute Russian girl is an assassin, thinking there must be some kind of mistake. But Shizuno insists she's telling the truth and then tells him about the duel they had the previous night. Learning that Shinazu put her life at risk makes Moroha furious, so he hugs her and warns her never to do something that reckless again. Touched by his care, Shizuno cries and then apologizes. But despite everything he's been told, Moroha still believes Elena isn't truly a bad person and is convinced she's just being manipulated. Elsewhere, Elena lies in her bed having a nightmare about her little brother leaving her behind. When she jerks awake from the nightmare, she finds a black cat with red glowing eyes on top of her and smooching her plots. The voice speaking through the cat tells her they know she hesitated to eliminate Shizuno when she had the chance, and then warns her not to lose focus on the mission, or she will never see her brother again. Right then, the doorbell rings, so Elena lets the cat out. When she checks who's at the door, she's startled to see Moroha and Satsuki dropping by to check on her. As they settle in, Satsuki makes lunch while Moroha heals the injury Elena suffered on her right leg during her duel with Shizuno. Elena is touched by everything they're doing for her, because back in Russia, no one ever cared even half this much. Satsuki even goes the extra mile to show she cares by mouth-feeding her, even though the food is so spicy it nearly fries Elena's tongue. At night, while sleeping, Elena gets a fragment of her past life memory and sees an abandoned baby crying, and when she wakes, she sees Moroha still by her side, but half asleep. The following morning, the princess treatment continues, as this time Maya helps Elena scrub her back, while Moroha helps make breakfast for her. At noon, Satsuki surprises Elena by cooking a Russian delicacy known as borscht, which Elena absolutely loves. Even other members of the striker squad drop by to check on her, like Sophie, the squad's busty queen. Sophie even suggests Elena could join the Japan branch after she graduates, and remembering how much Moroha and his friends have cared for her, Elena softens and actually considers it. But once she thinks about her brother, she steels herself again, and decides she won't betray him. A few hours later, Elena asks Moroha to take her on another date during their next break, so that weekend, they go on the planned date, but Shizuno receives some alarming new information about Elena. She immediately calls Satsuki to tell her, only to hear that Moroha and Elena are currently on a date together. Meanwhile, on the date, Elena and Moroha decide to spend time at the park, but the moment they arrive, Elena shockingly reveals her true identity as the Man-Eater and summons Replazin, her demon sword. Just then, Satsuki and Shizuno arrive at the park, desperate to stop whatever is about to go down, but they get blocked by Sophie, who says she can't let them enter. She explains that the US branch wants Moroha to defeat Elena, and they don't want anyone interfering. However, Satsuki refuses to back down and challenges Sophie to a duel, while Shizuno finds another way to slip into the park. Inside, Moroha and Elena clash fiercely, but when Elena gets too close, Moroha is shocked to realize her demon sword can absorb his prana. He tries keeping his distance and attacking with long-range magic, but Elena cancels his spells like they're cheap party tricks and keeps pressing forward. When Moroha tries to overwhelm her with raw prana, Elena absorbs that too, draining him and making him tired quickly. Even worse, Moroha realizes she can absorb his prana without even touching him. Meanwhile, outside the park, Satsuki and Sophie are still going at each other, and when it looks like Satsuki finally has the upper hand, all she manages to do is slice open Sophie's giant airbags. Inside the park, Moroha keeps defending himself against Elena's relentless sword strikes, but he suddenly remembers his past life as a powerful knight, cutting down armies and shattering their weapons. With this memory at the back of his mind, Moroha finally recalls all his legendary swordsmanship. So, this time, he releases all his prana and fights like a traditional samurai, relying purely on skill instead of boosting his blows. Meanwhile, at the entrance, Sophie finally summons her weapon for real after realizing the fight has gotten serious. She attacks with her massive weapon, but Satsuki remembers Moroha's advice not to get overly pumped and to stay calm. With these words of motivation, Satsuki manages to destroy Sophie's weapon, forcing her to surrender. However, Sophie is thrilled she lost, so she hugs Satsuki for being a worthy opponent and nearly suffocates her with her double D honkers. Back inside the park, Moroha finally defeats Elena, since she has no prana left to absorb. After Moroha pieces together that Elena's mission is tied to her so-called brother, he offers to help rescue him from the Lightning Emperor, but Elena insists it's impossible. Elena is on the verge of tears when Shizuno suddenly appears and reveals something shocking. Elena doesn't have a brother. She explains that the president of the institution told her Elena was abandoned as a baby and found alone on the night of a snowstorm. With that revelation, Shizuno points out it makes no sense for her to have a biological brother. Elena struggles to accept this, convinced it's a lie meant to fool her, but when Shizuno calmly asks her to say the name of this supposed brother, the chicken brain girl realizes she doesn't even know the name of the sibling she claims to have. Just then, the black cat, possessed by a Russian agent named Kondrat, appears and confirms that Shizuno is telling the truth. Kondrat explains that Elena's brother was never real, just a figment of her imagination that he implanted into her mind. Shocked to hear this, Elena crumbles into severe depression, and Kondrat immediately takes advantage of the moment to leave the cat and possess her body. Now controlling Elena, Kondrat launches an attack at Moroha, but Moroha dodges and parries each strike. As the fight intensifies, Moroha overboosts his prana, and with his expert swordsmanship, he enhances his blade with a powerful spell that destroys Elena's demon sword, forcing Kondrat's spirit to flee her body. Very early the next morning, Elena packs her belongings and prepares to return to Russia, but on the way, Moroha stops her by using a spell to gently put her to sleep. Weeks later, Moroha travels to Russia with Edward's maid, Angela, to attack the Russian branch and defeat the evil Vasilisa. The moment he gets to Russia, the first thing he does is ambush one of Vasilisa's top men named Bernard, who sees that Moroha is just a boy and immediately underestimates him, bragging about his impenetrable barrier ability. However, Moroha shuts that nonsense down fast by levitating into the sky, where he remembers his past life as Shirasa. With this knowledge, he also recalls one of his powerful dark arts magic, so he inscribes a spell that rains millions of lightning rods from the heavens on Bernard that knocks him out cold. When Angela asks if he unalive Bernard, Moroha tells her no, explaining that his intention is not to flatline anyone. Later that day, Moroha ties up Bernard in an empty warehouse, and when he asks for the whereabouts of the Lightning Empress, Bernard refuses to cooperate, insisting that he doesn't know. Realizing Bernard is too loyal to snitch on his boss queen, Moroha decides not to waste any more time by letting Bernard go free. Angela disagrees, saying it's a terrible idea to intentionally free the enemy. But Moroha tells her that he has no intention of wasting his precious time taking prisoners or to go about interrogating people like he is the CIA. Hearing this, Bernard mocks Moroha for being weak, so Moroha stabs his big round beer belly to show he isn't weak, and then tells him to deliver a warning to his boss that he's declaring war against her. Much later, while on a train, Angela demands to know why Moroha isn't trying to unalive anyone in Russia. Moroha explains that since Vasilisa's location is proving impossible to find, his plan is to beat up all the district's leader one by one to a pulp, and when he is done, Vasilisa will have no choice but to show herself. Still, Angela thinks the idea makes no sense, just like his face, explaining that the district leader's loyalty to Vasilisa runs deep. However, after Moroha tells her to trust him, she smiles and calls him a jack-in-the-box, since he is full of surprises. Meanwhile, Bernard manages to survive the stab wound, and after he returns to his district, he contacts Vasilisa through a magic mirror to warn her about Moroha's declaration of war. In response, Vasilisa says she forgives him for letting the enemy live, but since failure to unalive the enemy means death in her dictionary, she summons a thunderbolt dragon that strikes him, Bernard, on the spot. That evening, Vasilisa holds an emergency meeting with her 3 trusted minions, and when they ask what should be done about Moroha, Vasilisa confidently tells them nothing will be done. She brags that she can't be bothered by small fry, and her plan is to leave Moroha to the remaining district bosses, certain one of them will get rid of him eventually. Back on the train, Moroha complains about how cramped the sleeping space is for him and Angela, but Angela interprets his words as loneliness and offers to hold him through the night. Moroha, being a cultured Chad, immediately agrees to the idea of holding those bouncy ho-hos, but Angela, not expecting such a nasty response, gets flustered and quickly pushes him away. Meanwhile, back in Japan at the academy, Elena boldly declares her intention to become Moroha's younger sister from now on, but Satsuki angrily objects, insisting that only she is qualified to be Moroha's clapping sister. As the two continue to bicker, Shizuno loses her patience and tells them to shut their thirsty mouths. She reminds them that instead of fighting over silly things, they should be more concerned about Moroha's safety in faraway Russia. Later that day, while the Powerpuff Girls head home, they run into Maya, who expresses her concern about Moroha's safety, and this makes the girls extremely worried about him and pray he returns unharmed. Meanwhile, the next day in Russia, Moroha commences his plan by beating up every district boss he can find. However, he makes sure to leave them all alive just so his message reaches Vasilisa clearly, and his name spreads across the land. After destroying all 7 district leaders, he's left with the 8th and final district. That night, while searching for a hotel, Moroha notices spies tailing him and Angela, so he tells Angela to handle their luggage while he leads the pursuers to an area with less collateral damage. As he runs away with supersonic speed, he notices that the spies are chasing after him, so he leads them deep in the forest with less interruptions and casualty. There, he asks the spies to reveal themselves, and suddenly a dude smashes the ground, wielding a spear. He introduces himself as Roman, the 8th district boss, and then informs Moroha that he's already surrounded by the rest of his men. After Roman says they've been ordered by Vasilisa to take Moroha out, he leaps to the sky, and suddenly Moroha gets attacked by a freezing spear from nowhere, but he manages to evade the attack. Out of nowhere, the twin sister attacks, but when Moroha dodges their attack, they immediately clone themselves to overwhelm him. Still, Moroha effortlessly forces them to surrender and even saves them from an incoming massive fireball. Just when Moroha thinks the coast is clear, he gets attacked by a poisonous mist, and from within the haze, a dude with an ugly mask emerges ready to finish the job, but Moroha disperses the poison with Bree's blade and then knocks the dude out cold. Just then, Roman attacks again, but Moroha, knowing it's just a trick to deceive him and then blast him again with Freeze Haze, takes the fight to the sky. After taking out most of Roman's men, Moroha uses his X-ray vision to spot the last member and confronts her. Instead of fighting, Moroha decides to talk to her, and she quickly realizes Moroha isn't the villain they were told about, since she saw him earlier saving the twins. Still, Moroha flicks her forehead and puts her to sleep. A few minutes later, Angela suddenly shows up, ready for action, and that's when they encounter one of Vasilisa's powerful minions. The minion turns around and reveals a mirror, and through it Vasilisa herself starts chanting a terrifying lightning spell to summon a thunder dragon. Realizing it's too late to stop her, Moroha pushes Angela out of harm's way and takes the full blast of electricity head-on, cooking him on the spot. Luckily, Angela manages to break the mirror Vasilisa is casting from, and the moment she does, Vasilisa's minion escapes. As Moroha collapses, Angela immediately takes him to a nearby hotel where she drops him on the bed, and upon realizing that he's still breathing even though he's been properly cooked, she takes off her clothes to feed him with healing milk from her endless milk factory. By the following morning, Moroha is back to normal, while Angela is embarrassed because she spent the entire night blessing him with her soft kitty. Moroha then thanks her for healing him, which only makes Angela even more embarrassed, but just then, the girl Moroha flicked on the forehead earlier suddenly shows up to find them in the freaky situation. She immediately apologizes and leaves, and a few minutes later, after Moroha and Angela get dressed, they sit to have a talk with her. The girl introduces herself as Honda, and when Angela demands to know how she found out where they were, she explains that she trailed them after the fight at the forest and then begs Moroha for a favor. When Moroha asks what it is, Honda begs that she wants him to save her friend Yuli from Vasilisa, the Lightning Empress. Later that day, in the train, Honda explains that most saviors in Russia are orphans, and since they have no families, no one complains when they're abused. She further explains that Vasilisa gathers these poor orphans to make them fight each other to death, and then she makes the survivors her bodyguards. While Honda speaks, Moroha immediately thinks of Elena, realizing she's also one of these abandoned brats. After revealing all this, Honda chooses to betray Vasilisa and become Moroha's ally by also telling him the exact location of Vasilisa's castle. Shortly after, Angela admits to Moroha that she's impressed that his plan not to flatline the enemy that she originally thought was brain dead has turned out to be brilliant. She tells Moroha he's amazing. Much later, when they arrive at the train station near Vasilisa's territory, Moroha flicks Honda's forehead again to put her to sleep, so she won't get dragged into battle. As they head toward the castle, Moroha tells Angela he doesn't want her involved either, explaining that he wouldn't be able to face Edward if anything happened to her. Even though Angela insists she can fight, Moroha refuses, saying he can't confidently face the Lightning Empress while worrying about protecting someone else. Meanwhile, back at Vasilisa's castle, the minion who carried the mirror is sentenced to death by Vasilisa for fleeing like a coward instead of fighting. A few minutes later, Vasilisa, standing on the balcony of her mansion, sharpens her vision with the eyes of an eagle to pinpoint Moroha's location in the open field. To commence the battle, she starts chanting a high-level dark incantation that darkens the sky and summons an entire cavalry of lightning beasts. Seeing this, Moroha panics for a split second, before activating his prana and charges forward. With his katana, he starts slicing through the lightning beasts while advancing toward Vasilisa. Vasilisa is stunned by how fast Moroha is mowing them down, but one of her men beside her explains that Moroha is using military tactics and is moving so fast that even the lightning beasts can't keep up. He calls Moroha a genius military general, but Vasilisa just laughs like a true villain and says she'll use military tactics of her own. To do that, Vasilisa sends out her savior bodyguards, led by a dude with a chopped face. However, the problem is that her dumb lightning beasts start chewing up everyone, turning the battlefield into a chaotic mess and forcing Moroha to start saving them one after the other. Suddenly, Moroha gets trapped in a gravity field by Yuli, one of Vasilisa's saviors, and is unable to move a muscle. With him immobilized, Vasilisa's saviors and her lightning beasts all charge in for the finishing blow. But before they can, Angela suddenly comes to the rescue together with Honda and also Satsuki and Shinozu. From a magical circle, Elena also emerges and tries to talk sense into her former Russian comrades, urging them to abandon Vasilisa's twisted path and turn a new leaf just like her. She says she has been reborn after meeting Moroha, and she wants all of them to experience that same rebirth. Honda tries speaking to her friend Yuli, but after realizing the girls are under a spell, Elena cuts Yuli's necklace, snapping her back to normal. With their minds finally free, the girls begin turning against Vasilisa, and in the end, Moroha convinces all of Vasilisa's saviors to join him. Together, he and his newly gathered squad of allies face off against Vasilisa's colossal lightning beast army. This makes Vasilisa furious, so she orders her men to notify the Russian government that she's about to destroy the entire city. That said, she unleashes a terrifying lightning spell that summons a giant titan. Everyone panics, but Moroha tries attacking the titan with his combined abilities, but the gigantic freak counterattacks and fires a massive blast of blue flames. Moroha shouts for everyone to get down, and when they do, the blast flies over them and obliterates an entire mountain nearby. Everyone thinks it's the end, but at that moment, Moroha remembers an ancient, powerful forbidden magic and casts it. Instantly, the whole battlefield becomes flooded with a sea of black water, and when Moroha taps his foot on the water, the black sea surges upward, wraps around the titan, and eventually shatters to pieces. Seeing this, Vasilisa collapses in shock while her men abandon her and run for their lives. When Moroha finally approaches her, she desperately tries to summon her lightning dragon again, but Moroha snaps his fingers, and the black water quenches her electricity instantly. Realizing she is cooked, Vasilisa begs for her life like a pathetic weakling, and even promises to serve him. But Moroha simply turns around and walks away, leaving her in humiliation and defeat. After the battle with Vasilisa, Moroha and his girls relax at a local sauna, where Satsuki and Elena immediately start fighting over Moroha and arguing about who has the right to call herself his sister. The fight gets so intense they basically ruin the entire sauna experience for everyone else, so the rest of the group leaves, letting the two nutcases continue their ridiculous competition alone. While outside in the cold, Moroha and Shizuno decide to spend some quiet time together. Shizuno tells him that all she wants is to never leave his side again, and she wishes to spend the rest of her life with him, past and present. The next day at the White Knight Agency, Edward and Turtlehead Ando discuss what happened between Moroha and Vasilisa, and how Moroha completely destroyed her. Suddenly, Ando gets his usual chest pain panic that signals the presence of a metaphysical, only this time, the pain becomes far more intense than usual. So while the rest of the girls are teleported back to Japan, Moroha gets a call from Edward asking him to remain in Russia to help battle the new metaphysical. When the girls later arrive back at the academy, Maya is heartbroken the moment she realizes Moroha didn't return with them. She cries bitterly over his absence, and the girls are touched by how deeply she misses him. That evening, Satsuki invites Maya to stay in her room so she won't be lonely. So that night, Maya stays over in Satsuki's room, but to their surprise, the rest of the girls also show up for a sleepover so Maya won't feel lonely. However, in the middle of the night, Satsuki suddenly recalls a terrifying memory of a monstrous dragon, and it scares her stiff. Maya and Shizuno notice the fear on her face and ask what's wrong, but Satsuki brushes it off, and instead asks that they all make a wish for Moroha's safe return. Meanwhile, after Moroha helps the Russian saviors defeat the metaphysical, Ando, who is now hospitalized from the severe heart pain, wakes up trembling. Edward rushes to his side, and Ando says this time he's seeing not just any metaphysical, but the ancient dragon itself. At that moment, just as Ando predicted, the sky suddenly turns black as the ancient dragon, the final boss of all metaphysicals, emerges. Everyone in the city runs in panic, but this monster isn't attacking at random, as it has a target, and it immediately locks its terrifying eyes on the academy. In Moroha's absence, the rest of the striker team is determined to protect the academy at all costs. They prepare for battle, and Angela even joins the squad under Jin's command to help fight the monstrous beast. However, as they set up an ambush in the forest, the dragon, with its upgraded IQ, immediately sees through their plan. So, it leaps into the sky, disappears into the clouds, and becomes completely invisible. By the time it descends, it unleashes multiple fire blasts straight into the forest. The strikers scatter for safety, but the dragon locks onto its true target, Satsuki, and charges straight toward her. Satsuki tries to escape with Momo, but she slips and falls. At that moment, the monstrous dragon closes in, ready to chew her apart, but Tokiko and several strikers attack it with their combined magic. However, they're horrified when the dragon cancels their spells, rewrites their chants with its eyes, and fires their own magic back at them. Meanwhile, back in Russia, Moroha sees everything unfolding at the academy through surveillance footage, and he suddenly remembers the truth. This same ancient dragon was responsible for unaliving both Satsuki and Shizuno in his past lives. No matter how many times he's reborn, the beast keeps returning to take whatever he holds dear. Back at the academy, the monstrous dragon goes on a full rampage, destroying everything near the campus. Jin tries to stop it by leaping onto its back, but when he attempts to stab it, the dragon flicks him off like a stubborn mosquito and sends him crashing into the dirt. It then blasts him with a massive inferno, but Tokiko arrives just in time, casting a defensive shield to save him. But the dragon rewrites her chants, cancels her shield, and blasts both of them with fire. After that, the beast continues hunting for Satsuki, shooting fiery blasts at her, but Momo jumps in to save her, and gets burned badly in the process. Meanwhile, Principal Mari is preparing a teleportation spell to bring Moroha back, when she suddenly notices Maya is in danger, so she rushes to protect her, but gets burned to a crisp. Panicking, Maya tries to heal her, but Mari insists she finish the teleportation instead, so she transfers her teleportation ability to Maya, then loses consciousness. Determined, Maya puts on Mari's witch hat and begins inscribing the teleportation chant. The dragon notices her immediately and charges forward to stop her, but Edward appears like a knight in shining armor and blocks the attack. With Edward protecting her, Maya completes the spell, and from the magical circle, Moroha emerges together with two Russian babes at his side. The metaphysical continues to chase Satsuki, and just as it's about to blast her with a massive inferno, Moroha cancels the flames and saves her. He immediately orders everyone to retreat since he's clearly the dragon's target, and then warns Satsuki and Shizuno especially not to come anywhere near him. Moroha then launches into the sky and begins inscribing. He summons his fiery orb and merges it with his blade, but as he strikes with a powerful spell, the dragon cancels it, rewrites the magic with its eyes as usual, and tries to roast Moroha with its inferno, but Moroha barely manages to deflect it. Frustrated, the dragon growls in fury, and this time it releases a deafening sonic attack that causes unbearable pain. Everyone clamps their ears shut. Moroha charges the dragon again, but ends up with his sword shattered. This monstrous dragon holds the power of every metaphysical they've ever fought, and at that moment, Shizuno realizes it had been patiently waiting for Moroha to arrive before unleashing its full force. While Moroha is busy fighting off the swarm of bugs unleashed by the beast, the dragon goes after its true targets, Shizuno and Satsuki. It attacks them with a poisonous mist that turns their bodies into stone. Moroha freezes, and can't believe what he's seeing. He starts trembling, realizing he still failed to protect Satsuki and Shizuno, even in this life. As he remembers how they died in his past life, Moroha goes berserk in rage, and as an evil aura surrounds him, his sword turns pitch black, causing him to attack the dragon like a complete madman. He starts carving a forbidden spell into the dragon's body, one powerful enough to destroy everything and erase the entire city from existence. Everyone panics, realizing Moroha has gone too far and cannot be stopped. Just as Moroha prepares to unleash the spell that will annihilate the dragon along with every living thing, Satsuki and Shizuno fall into a deep trance and find themselves speaking to their past selves. Their former incarnations encourage them not to give up and to return so they can help Moroha this time. So, before Moroha can complete the world-ending spell, Satsuki and Shizuno return, reborn as Sarashi and the Netherland Witch. Together, they calm him, pulling him back from total destruction, and in that moment, Moroha remembers everything about his past lives. As a result, he merges the powers of Flaga, the Holy Swordsman, and Shusura, the King of the Netherworld, into one body. Seeing Moroha finally ready, the strikers do everything they can to create an opening for him to cast his ultimate spell. Moroha is stunned by how courageously everyone is fighting to end the dragon, and Satsuki assures him that this time, he isn't fighting alone. With the support of his girls, Moroha inscribes a powerful spell, and when the dragon tries to dispel the chant, Angela hurls a dagger straight into its eye, stopping it cold. With nothing left to interrupt them, Moroha, Satsuki, and Shizuno combine their powers to forge a mighty sword capable of splitting even the heavens. With the divine blade, they slice the dragon clean in half, causing it to explode in a blinding blast. The following day, Moroha and his girls escort Edward and Angela to the airport as they fly back to their base. At the academy, construction starts to repair all the destruction caused by the dragon. Elena, on the other hand, decides to stay in Japan with Moroha and the others, while the striker squad is back on its feet, with Principal Mari now completely healed. Even though a huge portion of the academy was obliterated, the principal reassures everyone that as long as they're alive and safe, that's what matters most, and the school will endure. Comment Swordsman if you watched this recap to the end. If you enjoy anime recaps like this, subscribe to the channel and watch this next video.